I remember the day I met Jax and Lila like it was yesterday. It was at this underground rave in the old warehouse district, the kind of place where the bass thumps through your chest like a second heartbeat, and the air smells like sweat, cheap perfume, and something metallic, maybe the rust from the exposed pipes overhead. I was 28 then, just another guy scraping by in the city, working a dead-end job at a call center where I'd pretend to care about people's internet complaints. Normal life, right? Wake up, chug coffee, deal with assholes on the phone, then hit the clubs to blow off steam. That's how I stayed sane. Or, at least, that's what I told myself. Truth was, I'd been feeling this gnawing emptiness for months, maybe years. Friends? I had acquaintances from work, the kind you'd grab a beer with after a shift, but nothing deep. No one who really saw me. My apartment was a mess of takeout boxes and empty bottles, and nights alone meant staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was all there was. That night, I decided to shake things up. I'd heard about the rave from a coworker, some pop-up event advertised on shady forums, no cover if you knew the password. I showed up alone, dressed in my usual black jeans and a faded band tee, feeling out of place among the neon-clad crowd. To loosen up, I'd popped a couple of those little blue pills, Xanax, I think, or maybe something stronger I'd scored from a sketchy guy at the bar earlier. Washed them down with vodka shots, feeling the warmth spread through my veins like liquid fire, blurring the edges of everything just enough to make the world feel exciting instead of overwhelming. The lights were strobing, bodies grinding everywhere in a chaotic rhythm, the DJ mixing tracks that pulsed with electronic fury. I danced a bit, or at least swayed, letting the music drown out the static in my head. And suddenly, there they were. Jax, tall and lanky with a mohawk that glowed under the blacklights, spiked up like a crown of rebellion. And Lila, her eyes sparkling like she just stepped out of a dream, her short pixie cut dyed electric blue, matching the crop top that hugged her frame. She moved with this effortless grace, like the crowd parted just for her. Jax had this rugged charm, tattoos peeking out from his sleeves, a leather jacket slung over one shoulder, and a smirk that said he'd seen it all and laughed at most of it. "Hey man, you look like you could use a real adventure," Jax said, clapping me on the shoulder. His voice was gravelly, like he'd smoked a pack a day since birth, but there was a warmth in it, an invitation that cut through the noise. He leaned in close, his breath smelling faintly of mint and something sharper, like gin. Lila grinned, her teeth perfect and white, flashing under the lights. "Yeah, Asher, let's ditch this noise and find something fun." Her voice was lighter, melodic, with a hint of an accent I couldn't place, maybe Eastern European? It wrapped around my name, like she'd known me forever. How did they know my name? I didn't think much of it. Parties are like that. People just vibe and connect. Maybe I'd mentioned it to someone earlier, or hell, maybe I was wearing a name tag from work without realizing. The pills were kicking in hard by then, making everything feel serendipitous, like the universe had aligned just for this moment. I nodded, a goofy smile spreading across my face. Sure, why not? Lead the way. We slipped out the back door into the alley, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap, sobering me just a touch before the buzz pulled me back under. The city streets were alive even at 2 a.m., taxis honking, distant sirens wailing, the glow of street lamps casting long shadows. We wandered aimlessly at first, laughing about nothing, our footsteps echoing off the brick walls. I pulled a bottle of whiskey from my jacket. Wait, had I bought that? Or did Jax hand it to me? Details blurred, but it didn't matter. We passed it around, the burn in my throat chasing away any lingering doubts. Jax started with the stories, his words painting vivid pictures as we strolled past graffiti-covered walls and shuttered storefronts. "Back in Amsterdam, man, I lifted this bike right from under a cop's nose, pedaled like hell through those canals, nearly ended up in the water." He laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that made me chuckle too. Lila jumped in seamlessly, her eyes lighting up. "Oh, that's nothing. In Bali, I surfed this massive wave at Uluwatu, crashed hard, but the rush? Unbeatable. Then we partied on the beach till sunrise, dancing with locals who taught me moves I'd never forget." Her tales had this exotic flair, places I'd only dreamed of, and she described them so vividly I could almost smell the salt air and hear the waves. I opened up a bit, sharing my own lame anecdotes, growing up in a boring suburb, the time I snuck out to a concert in high school. They listened like it was the most fascinating thing, nodding and asking questions that made me feel important. "That's badass, Ash," Jack said, slapping my back again. "You've got that fire in you. We can see it." Lila linked her arm through mine, her touch light but electric, sending a shiver down my spine. Exactly. We're going to have so many stories together. By the time we ended up at a 24-hour diner, scarfing down greasy fries and coffee, I felt this bond forming. It was effortless, like we'd been friends for years. No awkward small talk, just pure connection. The drugs and alcohol amplified it all. Their faces seemed to glow, their words resonating deeper than normal conversation. As the sun started peeking over the skyline, we exchanged numbers, or at least I thought we did. Turns out I never actually punched them into my phone. They just started showing up after that, like they knew where I'd be. From that night on, they became my crew. Jax with his wild ideas, always pushing for the next thrill, climbing fire escapes to watch the city from rooftops, tagging abandoned buildings with spray paint we'd found. Lila balanced it with her dreamy side, suggesting stargazing in the park or impromptu road trips to nowhere. We'd mix more pills and booze as the weeks went on, turning every hangout into an epic saga. Little did I know, that meeting was the crack in the door, the first step into a reality that would twist and shatter everything. It didn't happen all at once, this whole roommate thing with Jax and Lila. It was more like a gradual slide, the way friendships deepen when you're all riding the same wave of chaos and connection. After that first night at the rave, they'd show up sporadically at first, texting me to meet up for drinks or a late-night wander. But as the days turned into weeks, they started lingering longer, crashing on my couch after parties, until one day it just felt natural to make it official. It started about a week after we met. I'd had a rough shift at the call center, endless complaints about slow Wi-Fi, my headset digging into my ear like a vice, and I came home to find Jax already there, sprawled on my ratty sofa with a pizza box open on the coffee table. Grease stains dotted the cardboard, and he was munching on a slice like he owned the place. "Rough day, huh? Grab a beer from the fridge. I stocked it." Sure enough, there were fresh cans chilling inside. Lila emerged from the bathroom, towel drying her hair, wearing one of my old hoodies that hung loose on her frame. "We figured you'd need some unwinding. Movie night?" I didn't question how they'd gotten in. Maybe I'd given them a key during one of our blurry hangouts, or perhaps the lock was busted again. The building was old, after all, with doors that stuck and windows that rattled in the wind. I just felt this rush of relief. The apartment didn't feel so empty anymore. We spent that evening binge-watching some trashy action flicks on my laptop, passing a joint back and forth while the room filled with hazy smoke. Jax cracked jokes about the plot holes, his gravelly laugh booming, and Lila nestled against my side, her head on my shoulder, murmuring commentary that made everything funnier. By midnight, we were all buzzed on cheap wine I'd pulled from under the sink, and when I suggested they crash there instead of heading out into the cold, they agreed without hesitation. "Sounds good, roomie," Jack said with a wink. From there, it snowballed. They'd stay over more nights than not, turning my one bedroom into this makeshift communal space. Jax claimed the couch as his territory, piling it with blankets and pillows he'd found somewhere, soft ones that smelled faintly of lavender, which he said helped him sleep. Lila would bunk with me sometimes, platonically at first, just talking into the wee hours about our dreams and fears, her presence warm and reassuring under the covers. Other times she'd curl up in the armchair by the window, staring out at the city lights like she was guarding us. I never saw them bring luggage or personal stuff. They just fit in. We'd share chores in that effortless way, Jax handling the cooking, mostly ordering takeout or microwaving frozen burritos, Lila tidying up the clutter with a flick of her wrist, making the place feel less like a dump. I'd come home to the smell of fresh coffee or incense burning, the fridge restocked with energy drinks and snacks. It was like having built-in support, turning my solitary existence into something vibrant. Our days together blended into this rhythm that felt so normal, so right. Mornings started with that ritual, me stumbling out of bed to the sound of the TV droning infomercials, Jax already up and lounging, remote in hand. "Rise and shine, Ash, world's waiting to be conquered." The coffee was always hot, black and bitter, just how I liked it. Lila would join from the kitchen, her hair messy from sleep, handing me a mug with a smile that lit up the dim room. We'd chat over breakfast, cereal or toast, nothing fancy, planning the day. "Work's gonna suck, but we've got your back," she'd say, and damn if it didn't make the commute easier. At work, they were my secret weapons, turning the monotony into a game. The call center was this fluorescent-lit hellhole, cubicles crammed together like a maze, the air thick with the hum of keyboards and muffled conversations. I'd settle into my station, logging into the system, and there they'd be, Jax perched on the edge of my desk, whispering one-liners during calls. "This guy's yelling about his bill? Tell him it's inflation from alien overlords." I'd stifle laughs, my performance spiking because their banter kept me sharp. Lila would pace behind me, offering advice on tough customers. "Stay calm, Ash. Redirect to the promo." Yeah, like that. We'd collaborate on scripts, them suggesting tweaks that made me sound more confident, more engaging. Breaks were spent in the lounge, where I'd sneak in a quick pill or swig from a flask, and they'd join me in spirit, hyping me up for the next round. It felt like we were a team, hustling together against the grind. My metrics improved at first, fewer hang-ups, higher satisfaction scores, because their input made me better at faking empathy. Evenings were where we really bonded, diving into the city's underbelly. After shifts, we'd hit the streets, starting with low-key hangs like grabbing street food from vendors, tacos dripping with salsa, shared under flickering neon signs. Then it'd escalate, popping ecstasy or whatever pills I had on hand, chasing them with rum at dive bars where the jukebox played forgotten rock anthems. Colors would intensify, the world pulsing with energy, and we'd dance or wander, their energy feeding mine. Weekends were for adventures, like that boat heist on the river. Jax would take the lead on the risky stuff, hot-wiring the engine with a grin, his hands steady despite the buzz, while Lila provided the soundtrack, her voice weaving through the night air. We'd talk philosophy under the stars, passing joints laced with who knows what, debating reality and freedom. "We're building something here, Ash," Jax would say, his eyes intense, "a life without chains." We even worked together outside my job, scheming little side hustles to fund our fun. Jax had ideas for flipping stuff, scoring cheap electronics from shady contacts and reselling them online. I'd handle the listings on my computer, Lila proofreading the descriptions with her sharp eye, adding flair that made them sell faster. Or we'd busk in the park sometimes, Lila singing folk tunes while Jax juggled whatever was handy, bottles, fruit from a nearby stand, and I'd collect tips in a hat. It wasn't much money, but it felt collaborative, like we were entrepreneurs in our own chaotic world. Pills and booze were always part of it, smoothing the edges, making the highs higher and the plans bolder. Of course, cracks were showing even then, though I ignored them. Mrs. Hargrove's complaints about noise when we were just chilling quietly, my boss's warnings about distractions, the way I'd sometimes catch Jax or Lila flickering at the edges, like a bad signal, but I'd blame it on the hangover. They were my roommates, my partners in crime, my everything. How could I see the truth when they made life feel so full? The partying ramped up after Jax and Lila became fixtures in my life, like we'd unlocked some secret level of existence, where every night was a quest for the ultimate rush. It wasn't just casual anymore, it was a full-throttle escape, a way to drown out the nagging voice in the back of my mind that whispered about responsibilities and consequences. I'd raid my medicine cabinet for whatever remnants were left. Old painkillers from that time I twisted my ankle hiking alone last year, yellowed bottles of hydrocodone gathering dust. Then there was the Adderall I'd bummed off a coworker, Dave, who swore it helped him focus, but sold extras under the table during lunch breaks. I'd crush them up sometimes, mixing the powder into shots of tequila that burned going down but lit a fire in my gut. The combinations were reckless. Uppers to keep the energy soaring, downers to mellow the crash, alcohol as the glue holding it all together. My body protested, headaches that felt like sledgehammers behind my eyes, a constant tremor in my hands that I blamed on caffeine withdrawal, but the highs made it all fade. Euphoria would wash over me in waves, the world sharpening into hyper-real focus, colors vibrating, every laugh from Jax or Lila echoing like music. "This is living, Ash," Jax would say, clinking bottles with me in some dimly lit club, the bass vibrating through our bones. Lila would lean in, her breath cool against my ear. "Forget the rules. We're free." One weekend, about a month into our unbreakable trio, we decided to escape the city's concrete grip entirely. It was Jax's idea, of course. He was always the instigator, eyes gleaming with that wild spark. "Let's hit the woods, man. Get back to basics, away from the noise." I was game. Work had been a slog, my supervisor breathing down my neck about tardiness, and the apartment felt claustrophobic with bills stacking up on the counter. So I gassed up my beat-up Honda Civic, rust spots creeping along the fenders, tires bald from too many late-night drives, and we piled in. Well, I drove, gripping the wheel with knuckles white from the Adderall buzz, while they navigated from the passenger seats. Lila shotgun, her feet up on the dash, pointing out turns with dramatic flair.
"Left here, Ash. Trust me, secret spot ahead." Jax in the back, sprawled out with a cooler of beer between his legs, barking directions like a co-pilot. "Nah, ignore the GPS. It's for squares. Veer off at that dirt road." We wound through twisting highways out of the city, the skyline shrinking in the rear view, replaced by dense forests of pine and oak, the air growing crisp with the scent of earth and leaves. By the time we parked at an overgrown trailhead, the sun was dipping low, painting the trees in golden hues. We hiked in, backpacks slung over shoulders, mine loaded with snacks, theirs mysteriously light, flashlights bobbing as dusk fell. The path was uneven, roots snaking across the ground like traps, but we laughed through it, Jax telling crude jokes about Bigfoot lurking nearby, Lila humming tunes to keep our spirits up. After an hour, we stumbled on this abandoned cabin, boards weathered gray, windows shattered like broken teeth, vines claiming the porch. "Jackpot," Jax declared, kicking the door open with a creak that echoed into the night. We built a fire in the stone hearth, flames crackling and spitting sparks, the warmth chasing away the chill. Huddled around it, we passed a flask of whiskey, the stories flowing freer than ever. Jax confessed he'd once robbed a bank, small-time gig in his 20s, just enough to fund a road trip across the states. No one hurt. "Adrenaline like you've never felt," he said, his face shadowed by the firelight, making his mohawk look sharper, more menacing for a split second. Lila opened up about running away from a cult as a kid, some backwoods group in the Midwest, all robes and chants, her escape a midnight dash through cornfields. "They promised enlightenment, but it was just control," she whispered, her eyes distant, reflecting the flames. I bared my soul too, admitting how empty life had felt before them, days blending into gray monotony, nights alone with the TV's glow for company. "You guys saved me," I said, voice cracking, tears blurring my vision from the booze or the raw emotion, I couldn't tell. We toasted to our bond, the fire dying to embers as dawn crept in, birdsong replacing our whispers. Things got fuzzy after that weekend, like the edges of my reality were smudging, bleeding into one another. The blackouts started small, waking up on the couch with no memory of getting home, a vague haze of lights and laughter. But they escalated. I'd come to in unfamiliar alleys, bruises blooming on my arms like purple flowers, scratches raking my skin that stung under hot showers. "Rough night, huh?" Jax would chuckle, lounging nearby as if nothing happened. Money vanished from my wallet in chunks. 20s here, 50s there, chalked up to pickpockets in the crowded clubs or overpriced drinks I didn't recall buying. Work unraveled thread by thread, my focus shattered during calls, voices on the line blending with Jax's whispers until I couldn't tell them apart. The firing came on a rainy Tuesday, boss calling me into his office, face stern under the fluorescent buzz. "Unreliable, Asher. Absenteeism, errors, we can't keep you." I shrugged it off in the moment, adrenaline masking the panic, but unemployment hit like a gut punch. Jax and Lila were waiting outside, somehow knowing. "Screw 'em," Lila said, linking arms with me. "We've got better plans. Let's crash at a motel. Change of scenery, fresh start." We did, checking into a seedy joint on the city's outskirts, the kind with flickering vacancy signs and stains on the carpets.
I footed the bill with my last paycheck, ordering room service, burgers and fries that went cold uneaten, while we popped more pills, the TV droning in the background. Staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, I looked like a ghost. Cheeks hollowed, eyes sunk into dark circles, skin sallow like I aged a decade in months. "You need to eat more," Lila cooed from the doorway, but she never touched food herself, always waving it off. Odd, yeah, but friends worry in their own ways, right? I ignored the gnawing hunger in my own gut, chasing it with another swig. The adventures turned wilder, fueled by desperation as much as thrill, like we were racing against some invisible clock. One humid night, high on a cocktail of ecstasy and rum, Jax suggested breaking into an old amusement park on the city's edge, shut down years ago after a fire, now a skeleton of rusted rides and overgrown weeds. The fence was chain link, easy to scale with a boost from Jax, though the barbs snagged my shirt, drawing first blood. Inside, the place was eerie, carousel horses frozen in mid-prance, their paint chipped and eyes vacant. Bumper cars tangled like wreckage, rides creaked in the wind, shadows dancing like playful ghosts under the moonlight. Jax dared me to the Ferris wheel, its gondola swaying gently. "Crank it up, Ash, view from the top's killer." We manually turned the massive wheel, gears groaning in protest, until I was perched high above, the park sprawling below like a forgotten dream. Lila climbed up to join me, her kiss sudden and intense, lips cold but sparking electricity through my veins. "We're forever, Ash," she murmured, her hands gripping mine. But descending, my foot slipped on a slick rung, maybe from sweat or the buzz, and I tumbled, arms slashing open on a jagged edge. Blood poured hot and sticky, soaking my sleeve. They helped wrap it with strips torn from Jax's shirt, their faces calm amid my panic, but the pain throbbed deep, a persistent warning I pushed aside with more pills. Real life crumbled faster than I could patch it, the foundations cracking under the weight of neglect. Bills piled like accusations on the motel's nightstand, rent overdue, utilities threatening cutoff, credit cards maxed from our endless supply runs. The eviction notice came via certified mail, slapped on my old apartment door while we were away. The landlord changed the locks, my stuff probably in storage or trash. Family reached out, my sister, Sarah, calling from across state lines, her voice laced with concern. "Asher, you sound off, slurring, distant. What's going on? Come home, please." I hung up mid-sentence, heart racing, and vented to Jax and Lila back in the room. "They're just trying to control you," Jax sneered, his voice dipping lower lately, edged with a sharpness that raised hairs on my neck, like gravel grinding underfoot. Then the shift happened, subtle at first, insidious, worming into the cracks of my fracturing mind. It hit during a brutal bender in some dingy dive bar downtown, the air thick with cigarette smoke and stale beer. I'd mixed too much that night, Oxycontin crushed and snorted off the back of my hand, chased with vodka straight from the bottle, the room already spinning like a carnival ride. Laughter bubbled up, but when I glanced at Jax across the booth, his face flickered, eyes blackening to voids, skin cracking like parched earth under drought, veins pulsing dark beneath. "What the hell?" I muttered, rubbing my eyes, and in a blink, he was normal again, smirking as if nothing occurred. But the glitches persisted. Later that night, Lila's laugh twisted from melodic to mocking, a cackle echoing in my skull even when her mouth was closed, reverberating like it came from inside me. I shook my head, blaming what happened on the mix of cocktails, but deep down, a chill settled, the first whisper that something was rotting at the core of our perfect world. The next day, we decided to go on what was supposed to be our biggest adventure yet, the kind of thrill that Jax and Lila had been building up to for weeks, whispering about it during our late-night sessions in the motel room, their eyes gleaming with that infectious excitement that always pulled me in deeper. By then, we'd been on the run from reality for months. My job gone, apartment evicted, savings drained into a black hole of pills, booze, and fleeting highs. The city felt like a cage closing in, sirens wailing like accusations, and Jax suggested we dive literally underground. sneaking into the subway tunnels after hours, exploring the forbidden underbelly where no one went except maintenance crews and the forgotten. "It's raw down there, Ash," he'd said, his gravelly voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone as we huddled over a crumpled map I'd found in a dumpster. "No rules, no eyes on us. The real fun's below. Secrets the surface world hides." Lila nodded eagerly, her pixie cut disheveled from another sleepless night, tracing routes with her finger. "Think of the echoes, the history. We'll own the dark." I was all in. The mix of oxy and whiskey from earlier that evening had me buzzing with false courage, my veins thrumming like live wires. What else did I have? They were my anchor in the storm I'd created. We timed it for 2 a.m. when the last trains rumbled through and the stations emptied into ghostly quiet. Slipping past a chain-link gate near an abandoned platform, Jax prying it open with a crowbar he'd borrowed from a construction site, the air hit us like a damp slap, thick with the stench of mildew, oil, and something metallic like old blood. Flashlights sliced through the pitch black, beams bouncing off graffiti-scrawled walls and rusted tracks that hummed faintly with residual electricity.
Rats scurried in the shadows, their eyes glinting red in the light, tiny claws scratching like whispers. We ventured deeper, footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness, the tunnel curving endlessly into oblivion. Jax led the way, his mohawk casting jagged shadows, urging us on with that relentless energy. "Deeper, Ash. Feel that? The pulse of the city above us, but down here, we're gods." Lila linked her arm with mine, her touch cooler than usual, almost clammy, but I chalked it up to the chill seeping from the concrete. But down there, in the damp silence broken only by dripping water and distant rumbles, something fractured irreparably. The air grew heavier, oppressive, like the weight of the earth above was pressing on my chest. My flashlight flickered, batteries dying, or maybe something else, and when I swung it toward Jax, he changed. His mohawk twisted upward, lengthening into curved horns that gleamed slick and black like polished obsidian. His grin split too wide, stretching ear to ear in an unnatural rictus, teeth sharpening to points that dripped with viscous saliva. Lila transformed beside him, her sparkling eyes igniting into a glowing red, pupils slitting like a cat's or something far worse. Her fingers, once delicate, elongated into claws, nails curling like hooks, skin paling to a scaly gray. "We've been waiting for you," she hissed, her voice no longer melodic, but like scraping metal on stone, layered with echoes that bounced off the walls in dissonant harmony. I froze, heart slamming against my ribs, the flashlight trembling in my grip. "Guys, this isn't funny." My words came out weak, echoing back mockingly. The drugs, I thought, had to be a bad trip, a hallucination from the latest batch of whatever I'd scored. But it felt too real, the air thickening with a sulfurous tang that burned my nostrils. They laughed then, but it wasn't the warm, shared laughter of our adventures. It was a chorus of screams, distant and agonized, as if 1,000 tormented souls wailed from the depths. The sound clawed at my mind, burrowing in like shards of glass. "We're not your friends, Asher. We've never been," Jax snarled, his form bulging and shifting, muscles rippling under skin that tore like paper to reveal mottled hides beneath. Shadows coiled around him like living tentacles, writhing and snapping at the air. "Your weakness called us. The pills, the poison you pour into your vessel, it opened the door. Every swallow, every high, chipped away at your barriers until we could slip through." Terror surged through me, a primal flood that overrode the haze. I bolted, flashlight beam jerking wildly as I ran, the tunnels twisting like a labyrinth designed to trap. My lungs burned, legs pumping on adrenaline alone, but their voices pursued me relentlessly, whispering truths I'd buried under layers of denial. "You're alone. Always have been. We live in you now." Echoes overlapped, Jax's gravel turning to thunder, Lila's melody to venom. "The emptiness you filled with us?" "It was the invitation. Your mind cracked, and we poured in."
I clawed at the walls, fingers scraping raw against rough concrete, nails splitting as I screamed for help. Anyone, a night watchman, a homeless soul. But the tunnels swallowed my cries, amplifying only their taunts. Hours blurred into eternity down there, or maybe minutes, time warped in the dark. Finally, I burst through a maintenance hatch onto the street at dawn, gasping for air as the first light pierced the sky, the city stirring awake around me. Cars honked, pedestrians blurred by, but I saw them everywhere, in shop window reflections, their horned silhouettes leering. In crowds, faces morphing briefly into scaled horrors before snapping back to normal. Stumbling back to the motel, our latest home, a dingy room with peeling floral wallpaper and a bed that sagged like defeat, I barricaded the door with the rickety dresser, heart still racing. But they were inside already, inside me. My body ached from head to toe, every joint screaming in protest from months of abuse. The constant chemical assault had worn me down to a husk. Muscles atrophied, bones brittle, skin stretched thin over protruding ribs. My mind fractured like glass under pressure, shards of sanity splintering off into the void. I saw them clearly now, no longer disguised, demons in their true form, feeding on my decay. Horned and scaled, with eyes burning like hellfire coals, they hovered in the corners of the room, translucent at first, but solidifying with each passing hour.
Jax's tentacles lashed lazily, Lila's claws clicking against the floorboards. They whispered commands, insidious and unrelenting. Hurt yourself, end the pain. Hurt others, share the gift. I resisted at first, curling into a ball on the bed, mumbling denials. But the possession deepened, roots digging into my soul. My hands moved on their own volition, smashing mirrors with fists that bled from the shards. The act meant to silence their reflections, but only multiplying the fragments where they grinned back. Blood trickled from cuts, warm rivulets down my arms. But the pain felt distant, detached, like it belonged to someone else's body. Nausea roiled in my gut. Visions flashing of all the adventures now revealed as solitary delusions. I'd been alone on that boat, talking to empty air, alone in the woods, confessing to shadows. Days blurred into nights, a feverish haze where sleep evaded me, replaced by their vigilant watch. No more parties, no more highs, just survival, rationing what little food I had while they drained my spirit, siphoning energy until exhaustion pinned me down. I'd stare at the water-stained ceiling, their forms hovering inches above. Jax's breath hot and fetid, Lila's purr a velvet threat. "You're ours," she murmured, her claw tracing my cheek, leaving a burning trail that blistered and wept. Real? Hallucination? The line had dissolved. It didn't matter anymore. The weakness from the endless cycle of substance abuse, the isolation I'd masked with imagined companionship, had invited them in, eroding my defenses until demonic forces claimed residence in the ruins of my mind and body. Possession wasn't just a word, it was my new reality, a parasite feasting on what little was left. I don't know how much longer I can hold on, clinging to fragments of will as they tighten their grip. If you're reading this, they're watching. They're always watching. Their eyes are piercing from every shadow. Please help me, before there's nothing left to save.